Helen sits on her bed with her eyes wide open as she sees an apparition of Mary dancing around her room. This brings a smile to her pale face. She drinks her morning coffee while someone fixes her kitchen sink. She looks over at the calendar and wishes herself a happy birthday, before leaving the house with a notice in her hand and a hat on her head. Before hopping into the driver's seat of her truck, she looks up at a plane flying in the sky. Ray stands in line at the airport as he sees visions of a boxer preparing to fight. He steps to the desk and hands over his passport and plane ticket. He is questioned about what he was doing in Peru, and his response is that it was insurance legwork. He is mid-sentence when he spills the contents of his stomach on his passport, puking all over the immigration officer. Helen parks her car in town and steps into a bar after some hesitation. She hears the bartender talking to Mary, who is wearing a beautiful black dress. It seems like she is mourning, which explains her incessant drinking. The bartender holds back the booze because it's still early in the day, which causes her to lose her temper. She lashes out at him, so he pours more alcohol into her half-empty glass, and she sarcastically applauds him. The bartender moves to Helen, who has been watching the whole scene. She pulls out the notice from her bag and asks for directions to the American Signature Bank. The bartender explains that she's currently on Sunset Street, and the bank is on Sunrise Street. Helen thanks him while Mary demands one more drink, making Helen concerned about her. The bartender pours her what he promises to be her last drink, when Mary questions him about what he's scared of. His response is that he's afraid of someone getting hurt, and his sweetness makes Mary tear up. She compliments his kindness as he gives her a bill to settle the tab, expecting a tip since it's summertime. That's when Mary flips a coin, deciding that she'll never come back if heads come up. If it's tails, she'll leave nothing behind. She looks at the coin and smashes her phone into pieces aggressively, which almost drives Helen out of the bar. But she lingers for a little more to see Mary pick up her purse and look at herself in the mirror while trying to hold back her tears. Helen is standing by the door when Mary passes by her. She stops in her tracks and conveys to Helen that jealous men always find more than they imagine. Helen stops her and asks if she's okay, only to get a vague response before Mary walks out of the bar. When Helen comes out of the bar, she sees Mary getting into the driver's seat of her fancy car. She is worried that it's not right to drink and drive, so she offers Mary a ride, which she refuses and speeds away. Ray is at the hospital getting treated because he ate something wrong, thinking it was chicken. The nurse, Rose, who works long hours at the hospital, promises him that he has nothing fatal to deal with. She complains about wasting her life in this hospital when her colleague Romeo invites her over to his apartment between shifts. He boasts about the new water bed he got, while Rose hands him the test tube with Ray's blood. They're busy talking, which is why Romeo mislabels a blood sample under Ray's name. The doctor tells Ray that his X-rays are inconclusive, and it'll be the blood tests that will reveal more about his condition. If he hears nothing from the hospital within a week, then he has nothing to worry about. But if he gets a call within 24 hours, then it's something serious. Harv shows up at the hospital at Ray's request and gets a tape from him. Ray complains this job was very difficult, and Harv blames him for puking over a customs agent in return. Harv doesn't care about Ray's sickness, and reminds him that he had to call in a favor for him to not be apprehended at the airport when he got himself in trouble by vomiting. Harv has had enough of Ray, and informs him that he has officially hit rock bottom. Then, Harv reports to Ray that he and Ginger broke up, which is followed by a clarification that he never touched her while she was with Ray. This makes Ray upset, but he can't directly confront Harv because he's his boss. Harv is a conniving man, as he overcame issues with his vice president by sleeping with a director who is a widow. He has no regrets about it, and this is why he's more successful than Ray. After taking all his criticisms, Ray tries to convince Harv to give him another shot, but he's done investing in a lost cause. Harv tells Ray that he has to make his own luck or get crucified, because that's how the world works. On the other hand, the bank rejects Helen's request for the loan because of her mortgaged assets and lack of income. He calls her Mrs. Wilder, and she corrects him, explaining that she doesn't know how to change back to her maiden name. She shares that all her family is gone, and their debts are coming to her, which is why she needs a little money for a short while. But the banker's attitude is enough for her to understand that there's no use trying her luck here. She is driving back home when she sees Mary's car parked on the side of a desolate road. She stops to inspect the scene and looks inside the car to find it empty. She further explores the surroundings and comes across Mary's possessions lying around on the ground. Soon after, she discovers Mary's deceased body positioned under a tree with a gun lying nearby, which implies that she shot herself. She panics when the phone inside Mary's purse buzzes and is about to flee the scene when she gets a sordid idea. Ray is fast asleep, dreaming about boxing, when he is awakened by his phone ringing. It's a call from the hospital within 24 hours, which means that it's serious news. He schedules an early appointment, after which Harv calls him, checking to see if he's fine and ready to work, because he reconsidered his decision. Ray is still on the line when the director Joan comes up to Harv and gets him all hot and riled up. He hardly gets back his composure and assigns Ray his task to make them even, after which he follows Joan to her office. Helen reads Mary's suicide note, which says that she was a lonely woman surrounded by people. She didn't have any real friends or family, and believed that she deserved a good day after many bad days. The suicide note requests the reader to leave Mary's body where it was found, and help herself to whatever wealth they found her with. This is Mary's gift to Helen, who can see Mary's ghost speaking to her. So, Helen decides to respect her wishes and hides the gun in her attic. The national news reports that an armored vehicle crashed in the guarded district last night, spreading $250,000 throughout the area. Detective Dukes directs his men to keep people off the area when Ray gets there, introducing himself as a man hired by Mutual Insurance. Dukes orders him to get off the investigative scene in a demeaning manner, after which he continues to navigate the limited number of police officers under his authority. Meanwhile, Ray notices a kid stuffing his backpack with a stash of money that he found after the crash, right under Duke's nose. The kid sneaks away while Dukes demands Ray to show his ID. Ray tries to alert him of the kid's stealing, but he's so controlling that he cuts him off over and over again. His mistreatment of Ray causes him to keep his tongue tied, because he doesn't want to help a man as horrible as Dukes. Helen is riding the bus when she gets the sudden urge to get off, but the driver makes it clear that won't be possible until they reach the next stop, which is Kirkland County. Meanwhile, Ray follows Detective Dukes and Brank as they drive around the vicinity. Brank suggests questioning some guys on the sidewalk because they're wearing masks, but Dukes doesn't listen to him. Ray is observant enough to catch a woman walking with a trolley, unaware that the masked men are lingering behind her. He approaches the woman and shows her his temp ID. The woman hands him back the bill she found in the area, as Ray's company is the rightful owner of it. Ray tells her to keep it, as his purpose was just to make her aware of the masked men around her. He catches sight of the kid again and goes after him, only to be chased by the masked men. When he falls back on his bed that day, he can't avoid how exhausted he feels. But the day is not over, as he gets another call from the hospital. He gets put on hold, which increases his frustration. Helen walks around the city cluelessly, while holding a piece of paper in her hand with an address written on it. She hails a cab that takes her to a fancy building. She is about to use Mary's keys to unlock the gate when she hears some singing from a couple walking towards the gate. She scurries away like a thief, while Harv walks a harmonizing Ginger. She invites him upstairs for a drink and more, while Helen holds her breath, hiding behind a tree. Once the coast is clear, she goes to Mary's apartment and puts in the code attached to the key to unlock the door. She knocks before entering and steps inside an empty, but fully furnished and decorated apartment. She finds the bedroom, which has pictures of Mary with a man and some books that she wrote, which means that she was a published author. Her hand accidentally hits the remote, which causes music to blare out of the sound system installed in the room. Helen freaks out and tosses the remote to the bed to stop the alarming noise. Ray wakes up to realize that he drifted off to sleep while being on hold with the hospital. He picks up a knife from his kitchen and toys briefly with it, after which he grabs his binoculars and hat to go out into the night. He visits the classy restaurant across the street from Mary and Ginger's building, where Helen is also dining tonight. She witnesses Ray looking out the restaurant's window with his binoculars, which is an unusual sight for a restaurant. Ray is spying on Harv and Ginger, having a good time in the bedroom of her apartment. The server walks over to Ray and offers to take his hat, but Ray says no. Ray orders some bourbon, and the server subtly instructs the waiter to bring him the cheap stuff, because it's apparent that he doesn't belong here. Then the server moves on to Helen's table, who quickly picks up her hat, as if he is going to steal it. The server lists down the various options for the decadent desserts his restaurant sells, but she opts for simple chocolate ice cream with cookies, failing to understand his French. Ray continues to watch Harv run his hands all over Ginger when the waiter serves him his drink. Ray asks for the check, before downing his drink and accepting the truth that he is at rock bottom. He starts to cough uncontrollably into his napkin as Helen's check is brought to her. She points the server in Ray's direction, because it's obvious that he needs help. The server dismisses her concern, because he looks down upon both her and Ray. Helen and Ray open their checks almost simultaneously and gasp at how atrociously overpriced this restaurant is. Helen reluctantly puts down Mary's card, while Ray leaves the restaurant after spending the only money bill he has. Helen is about to leave the restaurant when the server reprimands her for not tipping. She finds it unbelievable that she has to tip 25% of a $105 bill. She's sleeping comfortably in Mary's bed, wearing her pajamas, when the sound of the phone ringing wakes her up. She accidentally sets off the music again and quickly shuts it down before letting the call go to voicemail. She listens to the message from Russ, whom Mary had been calling for days. He didn't return her calls until now because he didn't feel like doing it. He claims that he really wants to forgive her for what she did to him, but he can't. When Helen goes out the next day, she runs into Ginger in the hallway, who corners her and interrogates her about whether she is a friend of Jimmy, their neighbor. Ginger starts gossiping about Jimmy, while Helen attempts to look for an escape route. As Helen is finally hurrying off at the first chance to do so, Ginger makes sure to suggestively portray that she's the only romantic left in this building. After getting hit on by Ginger, Helen goes out into the city and observes all kinds of people. Frank and Dukes argue over whom they should go after. According to Dukes, the masked men are innocent and are dressed up this way because they are on community watch. He strongly believes that Ray is the culprit, which couldn't be further from the truth. Ray knocks at the door of the house where the kid he's been trailing resides. The boy, Andre, reluctantly answers the door and admits that his parents aren't home. Ray introduces himself, and Andre invites him in to show him the toys he made with materials lying around his house. Ray starts to question him about the crash on behalf of his insurance company. Andre is unfamiliar with the concept of insurance, so Ray acts out for him how insurance fights unexpected problems, like a boxer tackles his opponents. Ray examines the piano in Andre's house and tries his hand at it. Ray confides in Andre about how he was a Navy light heavyweight champ turned pro fighter. Harv used to be his manager, and playing piano used to be Ray's coping mechanism to deal with the problems in his life. He plays some notes again, after remembering what he claims to be the best time of his life. Women used to be all over him, and no one ever beat him in the ring. Now, he looks at his weak and ragged hands, where all his strength used to reside. Andre views the wound on Ray's hand, which ended his career, as a stray bullet coming from a block away pierced his hand many years ago. The accident ended Ray's capacity to do boxing, play piano, or get ladies' attention when he wasn't even 30. The unfortunate day feels like yesterday to him, and his head hangs low. To cheer him up, Andre shows him a pendant he found on the street the other day. Ray appreciates him turning this in, and signals him to sit down with him. Ray warns him about how dangerous it is to steal unclaimed money off of streets, because it is illegal. The money belongs to the company, even though Harv mentioned that they don't care about it. Harv's words about making one's own luck ring in Ray's ears, and he thinks of himself as a loser. Andre gets him a popsicle when he looks out the window to see the masked men making rounds in the area. Ray recalls getting sick after his first meal in Peru while he was on a job, and mutters to him while Andre helps himself to 2 popsicles. Ray regrets marrying Ginger, whom he met in Atlantic City, and confesses that he watches her sometimes to feel a connection, even though he knows that they weren't really in love. It's daunting for him to learn that he'll perish from this soul-sucking job while having nothing to account for in life. Andre gives him the backpack full of cash, promising that he told no one about the money. Ray starts to count the money, but Andre beats him to it and announces that the cash approximates to around $74,000. Ray is still pacing and evaluating his next course of action when Andre brings over more stacks of $100 bills he found the other day, which adds to both Ray's joy and dilemma. Andre wants to take a nap and shows Ray out, who begs him not to tell anyone about the money, and takes a few stacks of cash with him. Helen keeps checking herself out in the mirror after spending some time at a salon. She helps herself to some cold beer in Mary's apartment, and acquaints herself with this new luxurious lifestyle while talking to Mary's apparition. Both Ray and Helen have upgraded themselves with their newfound sums of money. Ray goes to the restaurant in better clothes this time, and gets good treatment from the server after he requests to be seated at the window table. Unfortunately, Helen is already sitting there, and is nowhere near done with her dinner. They both steal glances at each other from across the room when Ray orders a whole bottle of champagne with some overpriced onion dip. This is all to make a show of his wealth in front of Helen, whom he finds irresistible. Meanwhile, Helen feels ridiculous for dressing up, because she knows that the sharp man making passes at her will look right through her facade once they have a real conversation. But she knows that it's been way too long since she got male attention like this, so she doesn't break eye contact with Ray. He pays the pianist to play something soft and romantic, while he informs Helen that he's celebrating tonight. He tries to make conversation and impress her with his display of wealth, while she plays hard to get to keep up her pretense of being rich and classy. She nonchalantly brings up that it's her birthday today, and Ray wishes her a happy one before walking over to her. He can sense from her words that she's a good cook, and abruptly asks if she's married. She avoids the question, so he recalls his experience with marriage, giving her enough courage to share hers too. He compliments the view from her table, and she mentions that she saw a guy spying from here with a pair of binoculars. Hearing this piques his interest, and he spends some more money to sit down with her at her table, after which he formally introduces himself. They talk and eat some more, conversing very cryptically, as they're influenced by their internal conflicts, but yet they somehow fully relate to each other's struggle. Ray reaches his hand out across the table and lightly brushes it against Helen's fingers, which causes sparkles to fly between them. He starts talking about the time he went to Japan while he was in the Navy. Ray makes her wonder about the places they've never been to and could go now, but she brings up the binoculars guy again. They vaguely hint at their inner demons, but Ray ends the topic because he wishes to be happy tonight. She blushes due to his intense gaze on her, and he's certain that they were meant to meet each other. This also applies to their current situations, as they were meant to meet this twist of fate. Ray pays for both of their dinners because he plans to take her someplace quieter. He gives her the necklace Andre gave him, and she finally tells him her name. She accidentally says it's Helen, after which she mutters it's Mary, which confuses Ray, so he starts to call her Helen Mary. They walk through the city and get to know each other better, while still keeping an air of mystery about them. He almost kisses her, but they're distracted by some homeless people on the street who get money handed to them by Ray. They end up at a night bar, where Ray takes over the keyboard and starts to play it, cracking Helen up in giggles and laughter. She joins him in singing along to the song she used to perform as a kid. The harmony between them makes it feel like their souls are dancing together. They go to another place which is more their style, as the food is supplied by carts, and Ray gets them some cheap champagne. He proposes that they spend the night together if she promises not to talk about demise, and she agrees on the condition that he doesn't poke her identity crisis. They cause commotion as all the food cart vendors fight over serving them because of how rich they look, so they escape from there without paying for the food and hide in an alley. There, Ray gets the urge to kiss her, because meeting her makes him feel like the champion of the world. She stops him and admits that she isn't Mary, but that doesn't stop him from kissing her right there and then. She rushes him to her apartment, and he is worried about whether she knows Ginger. But it's clear that she doesn't know anyone here, so he goes up to her apartment. There, he listens to the passionate messages Russ left for Mary on the answering machine, which ruins the whole mood. Helen feels cursed and sabotaged by her newly claimed false identity. But Ray chooses to ignore Russ's comments and make the most out of this night. He stays on track and tries to get intimate with her, but she crumbles under the pressure of her secret and breaks down on Mary's bed. He attempts to stop her sobbing and assures him that she has everything he needs right now, regardless of who she is. They kiss some more, after which she requests him to wait for her in the hall while she makes an important call. She dials the phone while Ray practices his old boxing moves out in the hallway. He hides behind a wall when he hears Harv take his leave from Ginger. She struggles to make him stay and reminisce about Ray, when Harv explicitly reminds her how they broke Ray's trust together. Meanwhile, Helen calls the sheriff's office to report Mary's demise, but chickens out at the last moment. Harv abandons Ginger for good, while Helen opens herself up to Ray and demands to go home to her farm, because that's where she belongs. They finally spend the night together, and he likes her the same in the morning too, when she's in her rawest form. Helen wants to be with him because they're alike underneath. Ray promises to meet her back at the apartment after he sorts his matters, but gets shot by Dukes for stealing the money that Andre planted in his coat. Russ catches Helen living in Mary's apartment when he finally comes looking for her, but she kicks him out. This is because she despises him and blames him for Mary's demise. She makes her peace with Mary's ghost and the fact that she's fallen in love with Ray. He, on the other hand, knows he can't cheat his own end, so he ditches Helen, not wanting to ruin her life. They eventually meet back at Helen's house, where he passes away in her arms, bleeding out because of his gun wound. It turns out money can't buy love or happiness after all.